what I wish to talk about is consciousness for many people. Um, this is something that is incredibly conflicting according to mainstream understandings of what consciousness is. It is true that most people think of consciousness in terms of what they are conscious of. That is not something that I want to express. Consciousness, in its raw form, is always your ability to simply exist. It has absolutely nothing to do what you are conscious of or what the perceptions are in your mind of what it means to be conscious. Consciousness, in its pure form, is completely free of all conditions, and it is always present. Let's talk about this consciousness which is present. Consciousness is essentially one field of existence. So, you are an individual, I am an individual, they are individuals, but the consciousness that is streaming from individual to individual, person to person, animal to animal, there's always one conscious. And it is this unity of this one faculty of existence that we wish to explain and or focus on. Now, since this consciousness is always connected and it's never divided, despite the illusionary way through which we tend to live vicariously through the mind, it is always able to access each point in space-time or avenue through which this consciousness is shining. So, it is so that when we meditate, we may see a distant time in the future, or past, or understand our present. We may connect with a past deceased relative or a relative of the future. We may see a distant space and time, or astral project, a remote view, which our government does. There are myriad ways in which we can access this consciousness with infinite destinations through which we can arrive. So this is the nature of consciousness, is that consciousness is one unified existence that is always accessible to the mind, not the false ego, but the mind. There is a nuance between what the mind is and the ego. There is a false ego that lies within the mind, but that is the aspect of the physical body that we wish to release when reaching these higher states of awareness. Now, there are many sectarian branches that prescribe to explain the way through which you can achieve these higher states, these samadhi states of awareness. But the avenues through which you achieve them are just that. They are an avenue specific to the individual. What I do not want to do is sectarianize the idea of higher consciousness. There are many routes, but there is one higher consciousness. There is one unified field, and there is one connection. And so, we want to go over these basic concepts of how to expand your consciousness. So, when one decides that he or she wants to meditate or expand his or her consciousness, one must remember that consciousness is comprehensive And it runs the possibility of sounding crazy or being perceived as something that is crazy or something that is so advanced that it runs the possibility of not making sense. Consciousness represents the causational aspect of your beingness and all that which rises from, so that even in this sense we can understand that the mind or the body or this physicality is nothing but an origination issuing forth from this consciousness. So in that regard, when meditating, we cannot look to the mind to prescribe or to make sense of or rationalize the idea of consciousness when meditating. Because in order to understand it, we must release the mind or transcend the mind. So, release the mind completely and all of the perceptions involved with the experience of meditating. So that you sit comfortably or you lay comfortably. However you do comfortably, as long as it is safe, meaning you're sitting in a position or lying in a position that you do not have to worry about repositioning your body or your arms or legs or feet, or you're looking around or scratching, because you are in a most comfortable position, so that is one less thing the mind has to focus on. After you are in this comfortable position, you then want to release the tension, the rigidity in the muscles, either from the feet and up or from the head down. It makes no difference. And once you feel like you are in this peaceful, neutral state, the very next thing you want to do is center your breaths and breathe in and out. And with each exhalation, you want to release all negativity, doubt, frustrations, worries, especially anything that the mind wants to perceive. Just release all perception, all logicality. Just release it. And what you will see is that once you release the mind and you release the perceptions, then and only then can you truly be in the present. And to exist and to be, which is to exist without conditions. What you would notice is that when you are in this state of neutrality, the mind has a natural ability to judge this neutral state that you are in. Once again, when you feel the mind arise and it wants to make sense of your ability to just exist, push the mind down out of the way and simply, once again, just be. Now, when you are in that state, you want to apply a light center of focus to which you are wishing to explore in this consciousness. For us, and what we are doing, we are going to explain the connection between consciousness and the liaisons or connection through the close encounters of the fifth kind with the UFO intelligence. So, it is through this expansion of consciousness, or this realm of consciousness, through which we are able to connect to the UFO intelligence, because they are utilizing what's called transdimensional technology. The ancient Vedas called it transcendental energy, or energy is what they called it. Transcendental energy is what they called it. But modern physics or science would call it transdimensional technology. Now, anything that is trans has to go through something. And dimension represents the realm through which a specific gradient of reality is. And so, if you are trans-dimensional, then you are not moving in a way that is obviously in a linear fashion, but you are moving, in a sense, you are moving through time. And so, consciousness happens to be one of the elements, or consciousness and mind interfaces with thought, or interfaces with transdimensional technology. So, close encounters. What many of you know already is that a close encounter is just that. However, close encounters 1 through 4 are relatively passive. Defined by J. Allen Hynek, close encounter of the first kind is when you see a craft within 500 feet. Close encounters of the second kind is when evidence is left on the ground as physical evidence or radar evidence of a craft. Close encounters 3 is when there are physical creatures that are associated, that are seen in relation to a craft. Close encounters 4 is when one goes on board a craft. Now, close encounters 5, or CE5, is an encounter that involves direct or intentional, deliberate contact. Direct, intentional, deliberate contact was coined by Dr. Stephen Greer. So, that is the one that we wish to focus on because it is the one that is active, and it is the one that allows you to not sit back and wish or wait for another individual to tell you that we're not alone, but for you to go out and to make peaceful contact, meaningful contact, contact that is reciprocal and beneficial towards both you and them, and to be a representative of Earth for people who have not been able to represent the people of Earth. And so it puts you in the power seat and allows you to be a voice unto these visitors who, quite frankly, have been waiting for us to reach that level of maturity. And this is what many are doing across the world through the CE5 movement. Now, I understand that this is relatively new for some people, and it runs the possibility of, being unsettling for some, but this is the nature of the reality of the situation, and it is that we have never been alone, and that as it sits, there are there is enough evidence to literally submerge everyone in this room the world over. There's enough circumstantial evidence as well as primary evidence from first-hand witnesses. And we're not talking just regular citizens, we're talking credible military government officials. So, how did this subject get to be so taboo? Well, because, which we'll get into in a little later, there has never been a time where we were not in contact. And so since the beginning of this UFO matter, it was never considered something that should be brought out by those who we appointed to be in office. Never. Since the 1947 Roswell crash and Harry S. Truman appointed a group by the name of Majestic 12 or Majority 12, whatever. He did so in a way that was done in secrecy without the consent of Congress so that they could acquire an understanding as to what this was. And rightfully so, they wanted to know what this was. They wanted to know the visitor's intentions, wanted to understand this. But it was done illegally. And it was done in a way that you created a power group that does not have to answer to any democratic law, constitutional law, really not even the president. And so here it is now, 2015, and there has been no effort or no discernment to tell the truth, because the means of technological advances, the war machine, weapons of mass destruction, weaponization, world opposition has become more important than getting the truth out that could get us off of fossil fuels, revolutionize science and medical treatments, prognoses, and everything else that is comprehensive that deals with the matter. And so, also, this has affected our history in that the whole idea of UFO history cannot be talked about because it is thought of as something that is ludicrous, because those people that we appointed in office to tell us the truth have basically denied it. And so when the United States Air Force denies this and they run this fake investigation or erroneous investigations, and out of 12,000 sightings that they handpick, many of which that were seen by credible top military officials, basically denied and put out to the public to say, forget about this. It has no meaning, it's irrelevant, what have you. And so that's why this is not talked about in our academia. That's why it's taboo. And that's how certain Orthodox traditionalism managed to thrive in a world of status quo. Now, because it is a part of our history, it is our destiny to own this, to accept it, to be ambassadors to the universe, and to make peaceful contact. That is the destiny of humanity, if we are to be responsible.